Hello, this is Bob back from AppJedi. It's Tuesday, November 5th. Today, what I'm going to talk about is the topic of HTML forms. I've got a link for the final presentation down here that you'll be able to click on to see. And talked about introduction to HTML last couple of lectures, and also how to download and install something called XAMPP, which will come into play when we start looking at PHP. Now, I'm going to show you a very basic PHP because forms are generally submitted to a back-end process such as PHP. It could also be some other ones like Node or Java server pages or Python or something like that. But we'll give you a very simple example of how this is sent to a PHP page. But first we're going to talk about the basics of HTML forms. Now to do this I'm working on Windows today, and I'll be doing a lecture series on both Windows and Mac. I know a lot of people like the Mac. I even have Linux that I could do it on. But today I'll be using Windows. Now for editing the HTML pages, and the HTML pages can run on your local computer. You don't need anything special. You can just edit it with any editor. You could use Notepad. I prefer Notepad++. I'm going to show you how to just use simple Notepad for doing this, and then we will switch to Notepad++. It's better. You can download that. It's a very simple editor. The download for this right here for the XAMPP includes downloading Notepad++, simple editor. But I'm going to get started first just showing you how to use simple Notepad. Notepad's a little difficult because it assumes a text file, and in order to get it to use a non-text can be complicated. So first of all, I'm going to go down to my search here and type CMD, which will just bring up a command prompt in Windows. And I'm just going to type in here Notepad, and I'm just going to say form1.html, something very basic there. Actually, we need to go into I'm going to go into my temp directory, put it in there. It'll be easier, just in temp directory. We're going to move this to Notepad++. But Notepad form1.html. So now we come in here, and you can type the very basics of an HTML page, which we talked about already, which always starts with the HTML tag, and then a title tag typically. My first form. Usually you have a header section too, which we're not going to do anything with just yet. And the main part of the form goes into what's known as the body section. We talked about in the last couple of lectures what that is. And then just close this all off. Then for the form section, they go in what's known as a form tag. And now we'll look at the very basic, a simple input item for a form tag, and we're just going to call it name. And an input tag, type equals text. That means you're going to enter simple text, nothing else to it. You have to give these things a name when you're submitting them to a back-end server. And the reason for that is that the back-end server needs to reference that value somehow. It becomes a variable, what's called a variable in the server-side language that's receiving this data from your browser, which runs on your computer or your smartphone or something, or your iPad or something like that. Now you can also give it an ID, which can be the same value. ID comes into play when we start looking at trying to reference the form from JavaScript, which I'm going to do a full lecture series in JavaScript. I'm going to do a full lecture series on back-end server languages like PHP. Also, Node.js is very popular, becoming very popular. So we'll do that as well, and even maybe some Java server pages. So this is the very basic. So we'll go into the temp directory, and we've got a number of things here, details. Sort by date, form 1. I'll just double click that. And there it is. Not much to it. Name, type of value, and that's it. Now we can move further with this, but what I'm going to do is, for purposes of making it easier to work with, I'm just going to copy and paste this into Notepad++, which I already have running. And we're going to create a new one, paste it in there. I'm going to save this, and where have I got this under? Okay, that's the correct place for it. I've already got something called Form 1, so let's give it another name. Form 1, Form 2, that's fine. Form 2. Oops, and that saved it as text. That's a problem. It needs to be saved as HTML. So I just need to come down here and change this type to HTML. And Notepad++ is really nice. It color coordinates it. So let's just change this to, say, username. Make like a little login form. And I'll change this to username. The second field we'll look at is called password field, and I'll just give this a label, password. We're going to look at what you can actually, this is not really the right way to do it. You actually give formal labels. What we're doing right now is we're creating the skeleton of a web page, not the complete web page. In order to make it look really nice and pretty, you have to use CSS. And I will be, again, doing full lecture series on CSS as well. But right now we are just doing the skeleton of a web page and a web form. That's it. Now, let's go. So these things are actually going to be under my XAMPP, because we are going to, towards the end, we are going to run this on a local XM server so that you can see. Okay, so there it is. So now I can open this one in Chrome, for example. Maybe I want to open it with Chrome instead. I prefer Chrome. And here we can type in, now it says username and password. And I can type in Bob. You can see it in plain text. But if I type in a password, you can see how it's blocked, right? And that's how that would work. This looks a little ugly. If you want this to go on different lines, you can put in a line break here. Will work to get that down to the next line. And then we refresh and it's on the next line. Still not pretty. These things aren't lined up well, but HTML, like I said, is a skeleton. It's not the final product. In order to make it look really nice, we have to use CSS, which we will get to. Some other fields you have here could be a radio button, radio buttons and checkboxes. So let's say here we want to do gender. Input type equals radio. And again, name, let's say, will be gender. We can give it an ID button as well. We'll leave that. We don't need to do that right now. So male. And then we also have to do one for female. And I know that there will be multiple options here, but we'll just make it simple for now. Okay, so female. So now let's see what that does. Okay, now that does it okay, but it puts it again on the same line, and we don't really like that. So after password, we can put a break here, which will put it on a different page, and then we get that. Another option you have are checkboxes. So checkbox may be, let's see, it could be preferences. And we want to put a empty here as well. Preferences. Type equals and we'll say name equals, let's just say smoking, smoker. I don't know, could be almost anything. Let's put another one. say social drinker. Maybe it's a social media website or something. Okay, now these here you can check multiples. You can check all of them. Here with this gender, it's one or the other. So the radio button is just that, yeah, one or the other. Okay, now you have a couple of possibilities here. You could have some drop down. Another possibility is what's known as a select or drop down list. Again, I'm going to do a break here. And this could be, say title or education. Let's say education. Okay, education. Select list. Okay, let's say option. High school. And I know there's a bunch of different possibilities. College. Graduate school. And what is this? Postgrad, right? Option is it postgrad? Let's say postgrad. And again, we'll keep this pretty simple. And now we do need to give this also a name so that the backend server that receives the data knows what to call it. And education. Okay, those are some. Well, let's take a look and see what we've got now. Okay, so you got all that different education levels. Some other possibilities are a numeric type with ranges. And let's give this, what are we going to call this? Age. And name equals age. And again, we could leave it at that. And if we do that, this thing will let you go as high as you want. It can also let you go into negative numbers, which doesn't make any sense at all, right? So you want to put some validation on that. So here you can put min value is, let's say 1 year. Well, let's see, maybe it's an adult site, so you got to be at least 18 or something like that. I don't know. It's required, or adult content, so to speak. And you don't have to put a maximum, although we can assume that no one maybe lives past 150. Let's be optimistic, okay? So you can, all right. So now, if we refresh this, now we'll see that we can't go below 18. Now we can go, this will go, it'll keep going and keep going and keep going, but it'll stop at 150. Should stop at 150. Yay, it stopped at 150. Okay, so you've got that. And again, you might probably want that on a new line. Another data type you have is dates. Very common is dates. And let's just say, I guess we'll say birth date, although it's kind of redundant. If you have the birthday, you can calculate the age. But let's just put that there. Input type equals date. Name equals, let's say DOB. And here you can do minimums too. You can put minimum date ranges. You might want to say, okay, that min equals, say, no one born before January 1. Well, it's possible someone could be older than that. We'll just put that there. And max, well, no one could be. You can put a range in there too. Let's just say, 19, 01, 01. We're not going to allow newborns on the site. And these things are things that once we get into some more dynamic development, that you can actually calculate it and say the maximum is today's date, for example. Or this could be something else, a range for a future date. Expected date, maybe for a pregnant woman, for example. What's the expected date or something like that. So you can put all kinds of dynamically. You can use JavaScript to dynamically calculate that. And again, we're not doing JavaScript yet, but I am going to be doing a full series on that. Okay, so now I've got date of birth, and this thing will January. Okay, and if we look at it, it controls the range. Okay. The last field, we're actually going to do two more. We're going to look at, say, how about an image? My picture, for example. You can do an image. Type equals file. And it's only a file type, so technically they could upload any when they want. So we can do this here, and now you can select a file of some kind if you had an image pic. Now, when we get into PHP scripting, I will show you how you can upload a file into the server itself or into a database server, which is usually the preference for uploading files. Okay, now the final data type here I'm going to do is what's known as a text area. And for a text area, that's where you can do multiple lines. And again, we have to give this a name as well. We'll just call it comments. And the text area has to be closed. Go in here, refresh again, and there you can type in whatever comments you want. Whatever comments you want. Now this is obviously not pretty. Like I said, this is the skeleton of a web app, a web form. What makes this pretty, everything lining up nicely and everything, is CSS, cascading style sheets. And I will be doing lectures on that as well. Okay, so that's a basic form. Now, the last part of this I'm going to do, and this is not really a class on PHP, but just to show you what would happen with this data is it would get submitted from your browser that is running the form and collecting the data to a server somewhere on the internet. And so we're going to create a little server. Now, and I'm just going to submit it. And the way we do it is we say an action is basically where you're going to send it. And the action is going to be, say, form 2.php. You're going to send it there. And method, you have to give this to, is post. All right, so now we need to create that form 2. All right, so we're going to use a very simple PHP. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because this is not a PHP class per se. There will be a full series on PHP. And one of the things we can do is say extract $_post is an array that PHP uses to keep all of the data elements from the form. And we're just going to print out a couple of the data elements. So I'll start with username. And this will be .username. Okay, so I'm going to save this as form 2, and it's going to be there it is, PHP. Okay, so username with a $. PHP prefixes all variables with a $. And you'll notice here, username is the name in the HTML form, so that's what we call it on the PHP form. So now to give you this example, I have to start my XAMPP. We really just need Apache. Now, going back to my web page here, for YouTube, I have a lecture on how to download and install XAMPP, and it includes Notepad. And like I said, I'll be doing a full lecture series on PHP. So now we got this started. And so now we have to go and we run it on what's known as localhost. Host, I think it's AppJedi. Is that right? No, we didn't like it. Maybe it's AppJedi.net. Hey, there it is. Okay, now, but I have to go to the actual lecture, which is YouTube. I think I call it form2.html. Yay, there it is. So here, oh, okay, we're missing one thing. We have to add a submit button to the form so that it knows to submit it. So here is the end of the form. The very last button you need down here is to submit it, and that's just going to be input type equals submit. And you can give it a value because it doesn't give it a really nice name, and just say submit. Okay, then we come back here and we save this. Now I've got submit. That actually should go on a new line. And again, this is not making it pretty yet. That's coming soon with CSS. Now if I type in a name here, I'll say tester, click submit, PHP, which is right here, it shows that. Now we can put some others. Now for example, I'll show you the password. Now the password is invisible on the form, it hides it. However, the backend server, and remember this is on a secure server run by you or some company that's writing this whole thing. So they need to know what the password is to verify that you're the correct person logging in and that you got the password correct. So let's refresh that again. Tester and the password. And then we just submit it. And then we get this, which is kind of ugly. But what I typed in is, oops, you know my password. Now we can make this look a little prettier in the PHP by giving some HTML tags. PHP is rendering to the browser from which it got the request. So the response really needs to be in an HTML format. So we'll just go some very basic HTML here, nothing too fancy, just so it shows up on different lines. And you can just refresh it and you'll get that. And you can put other things too. For example, let's just say, I think I called that DOB, right? I'm not going to do all of them, but you can see how this works. You have access to all of them. So I'll just put DOB for short, date of birth, DOB, and just give it date of birth. Okay, good enough. Where's my submit? No, there it is. And again, Bob, tester, password. I'm just going to say test 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the date of birth. Click submit. Ooh, that's ugly. What happened there? That's very ugly. What happened there? Oh, I know what happened there. Okay, tester. I submitted from the local host. That's from the actual file. That's why it was ugly. It wasn't actually processing the HTTP. Okay, now submit. There we go. Date of birth 2018-08, which is what I entered, and that's going to be it for this lecture series on forms. There's going to be future lecture forms series, more forms. I'm going to be doing a full lecture series, like I said, on PHP, CSS to make it look pretty, because right now it's ugly, and also MySQL. The other end of it is, what do you do with the data once you receive it from the form? PHP gets it and processes it. You probably need to store it in a database for later use. So there'll be a full lecture series also on MySQL, the entire LAMP stack, how you use MySQL and PHP together to work with data collected on forms. So look for that in the future. You can contact me on Facebook, AppJedi.net, YouTube channel, AppJedi, email appjedi.net@gmail. Go to my website, AppJedi. And that is it for now. Thank you.